New music, new title, same old Royal Rota, here again. Hi Lizzie, how are you?
Hello, yes, good, thank you.
Not long back off a plane?
No, we've just got back from Edinburgh, where we've been with Prince Harry. He's back in the country for what we're billing the farewell tour.
The farewell tour, we were in Edinburgh. Harry's obviously not been in the UK since negotiating the split from the rest of his family. And then up he pops in Edinburgh this week. Back in the UK, we think for the next week and a half, and then see ya.
We think that's
done.
That's them done.
Wow.
And gone. Would you like a roundup of the rest of the week?
Yes, so we're obviously going to talk about the Sussexes. We always say that we will try not to talk about them, but they tend to make the news themselves. Actually, part of what's happened this week, as Lizzie will go through in the rundown, is they could have created the news by kind of criticising the Queen. Would it be fair to say?
I think so, yeah.
OK, well, we'll discuss that in a minute. So
say.
there's some Sussex news in this week's podcast. Of course there is.
A lot.
But why don't we do Lizzie's, Robinson's Royal Rundown. I'll get it right one week. Robinson's Royal Rundown. Here we go.
Drum roll. So this week, this time last week, we were talking about the Sussex Royal brand and whether they would be able to keep the word royal. And it turns out they can't, and they're not going to.
As we said last week.
As we said last week. So there was
a confirmation now.
There was a confirmation that they would drop that, and that was made in a very simple, straightforward statement that came from Buckingham Palace
on Friday night.
On Friday night, and then following that, their Sussex Royal website was updated with their own statement.
Right, and we'll discuss that later. So that's last Friday. What else has been going on this week?
We had some details this week of the spring tour for the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. Harry, as you said, has been in Edinburgh. He's back from Canada, and he's been in Edinburgh talking about his sustainable tourism initiative.
Travelist, yes.
Which is a merging of travel and catalyst.
Oh, right, OK. and eco-ness somewhere, and supported by some quite big players, but we'll come on to that.
There were some great images this week of the Duchess of Cambridge at a Sports Aid event, and that's a charity that's helping the next generation of sporting stars.
Tracksuit or whatever she was
wearing.
wearing.
She was doing some running.
I know, not good on fashion.
Taekwondo.
Right. What was she wearing?
Green
thing, tracksuit, trousers, sporty things.
Prince William was, he had a couple of visits in Nottinghamshire, one to a homeless centre, which is obviously a cause very close to his heart, following on from his mother's work. And then Prince Harry had a second event with the Invictus Choir and Bon Jovi, which we'll look at the end of the podcast.
Well, oh my goodness, right, so where do we start? Actually, that rundown was probably longer than a minute, but I think it sort of kind of justified
Was that all I'm allowed? Just a minute.
So we start, let's roll back to last Friday.
Yeah.
Maybe they were watching and listening to our podcast and they thought, well, Chris and Lizzie have decided that the Royal isn't going to happen.
I don't think it was just us.
Buckingham Palace put out this statement. So, I mean, I was at home trying to cook some food. It was Friday evening in the UK.
Yeah.
And out pops this statement from a spokesperson for the Sussexes with its Buckingham Palace email address. While the Duke and Duchess are focused on plans to establish a new non-profit organisation, given the specific UK government rules surrounding the use of the word royal, and that bit's important, UK government, because of what Harry and Meghan are about to say. It's been agreed that their non-profit organisation, when it's announced this spring, will not be named the Sussex Royal Foundation, as we discussed last week. Excuse me. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex do not intend to use Sussex Royal in any territory post-spring 2020. And therefore that trademark we also discussed last week about filing Sussex Royal as a protective measure have all been removed. So we thought that was the end of the story.
Here we go.
This is from Harry and Meghan's spokesperson in Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
But what did Harry and Meghan do then?
So we thought that was it. Cleared up, dealt with. Then, as is becoming the norm, on Instagram, on their Sussex Royal, again, Instagram
that needs a name
account,
change, right?
They posted a story with a link through to their Sussex Royal website, and they fleshed out what that statement had said from Buckingham Palace with some of their own thoughts.
Now, I've got the statement in front of me here, and I've just gone and got a pink highlighter pen out of my drawer and
mine's
gone
yellow,
through it.
Okay.
And you've got yellow, I've got pink. Now there's actually a lot of colour on my page. Yours too?
A lot of colour.
Yeah, a lot of colour, because actually their statement was really quite... I mean, extraordinary, I suppose. I mean, because as we've just discussed, this statement from Buckingham Palace says, as per the government rules. Well, Harry and Meghan add in a note at the bottom of theirs that actually the monarchy, in other words, the Queen, and the Cabinet Office, which is a branch of the British government, do not have any jurisdiction over the use of the word royal overseas. Effectively, this was Harry and Meghan, whoever wrote this, saying to the Queen, you're wrong.
It's effectively, them saying, OK, well, we could use that word and we could keep this branding overseas if we wanted to, but we're going to drop it.
Right. So we're being nice to the royal family, we're going to drop it. Now, they currently live in Canada. Now, I'm meant to know these things. Canada is not only a member of the Commonwealth, one of the 54 countries in the Commonwealth, it's also one of the 16 realms, of which the Queen is still the head of state. So you'd think if she's the head of state, she's the Queen of Canada as much as she's the Queen of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Therefore, she kind of does have jurisdiction over the use of the word royal in Canada, one would imagine.
Yeah, and this statement, for many reasons, but including, there has been a lot of focus on this section where they've said we could use it overseas, but we will drop it.
Yeah.
Is, words like petulant, sour have been used to describe the way they hit back at this.
Fair? I mean, obviously, Harry and Meghan, it's, people sometimes say, will be criticised even if they were acting like Mother Teresa. Is it fair to say that they've been a bit petulant, a bit like stomping their feet like moody teenagers?
It was almost like they wanted to have their say. They couldn't. I think this story actually that statement would have dealt with it and it would have gone away, but this managed to blow it all up again.
Well, and I think that therein is a point, because Harry and Meghan will probably say, people always make stories out of us, whatever we do, people sort of blow it up into a story. This would not have been a story had they not issued almost a correction of the Buckingham Palace statement earlier that evening.
And there's other things to point out in here, including what people have looked at as a sort of dig at other members of the family. There's one section which says, while there is a precedent for other title members of the royal family to seek employment outside the institution, for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, a 12-month review period has been put in place, i.e. some members of the family can have it both ways, but we can't.
Now, are they right to say that? Because if they were referring, for example, to Princess Eugenie and Beatrice, who are both Her Royal Highnesses, they both have separate jobs, they do represent the Queen, but only in terms of perhaps supporting various charitable causes. But they also fund their own security. And Harry and Meghan make a real song and dance, effectively, in here about their security, when they say the reason that they have it and the reason why the British taxpayer should continue to provide for their security is because it's based on the Duke's public profile by virtue of being born into the royal family, his military service, and, the statement adds, whoever wrote it, the Duchess's own independent profile and the shared threat risk documented over the last few years.
So I think this is going to continue to sort of rumble on who exactly is paying for them. They've made this choice to step back as senior members of the family, to seek an independent life, to earn their own income. Therefore, should the British taxpayer be providing security for them, and also increase security, because they're now effectively living in the UK and North America. They say they're going to return to the UK regularly.
Yeah, therefore, it's going to cost a fair bit of money for police protection officers from the Metropolitan Police in London to fly to and from Canada, let alone the effect it might have on their own
And if they split the family, in terms of, there's been occasions where Harry and Meghan have been in the UK when they came over to Canada House and they left Archie in Canada. That increases protection for them. So the costs are going to go up. And
there was a report in the Daily Mirror by Russell Myers, who's been on this sofa before, hasn't he, saying quite how much that was going to add up.
Yeah, I think they had a figure of in excess of 20 million a year. Yeah. Potentially, which is a lot of money.
And if the Queen has security, Prince Charles has security, it's whether or not people at home feel like that is justified. Anyway, there were some protection officers with Prince Harry when he went to Edinburgh this week for this very first of his farewell tour, however you want to put it. Here's a bit of what Harry said to the audience when he gave a speech to this event It's all about eco-travel, eco-tourism, making that industry much more sustainable. It's called Travelist. He launched it last year. This is a bit of the speech that he gave.
It is predicted that tourism will reach over 1.8 billion travellers by 2030. If we do not act, and in large part get ahead of this inevitable surge, this massive increase will mean we see more of the world's most beautiful destinations closed or destroyed, more communities becoming overwhelmed, more beaches shut because of pollution, and animals and wildlife driven from their natural habitat, which has a huge impact on communities and reduces tourism opportunities. But we are here to find ways to make sure that that does not happen. We all see a future where people are able to take holidays and trips that have social, environmental and economic benefits to communities and destinations built in. I want to help create a platform where all of us concerned about these issues can work together, where competitors can unite and incentivise a positive systemic change.
Now, the key bit in Edinburgh really happened before he gave that speech, because the event host, who is called Aisha Hazarika, who is actually, she used to work for the UK Labour Party. She's a political commentator. She's a columnist in newspapers, etc. She was the event host, but she revealed on the stage that actually Harry at this event didn't want to be called Your Royal Highness, even though he's got the title and he's going to keep it going forward, but he just wanted to be called
Just Harry.
Right, and this is how she announced it to the audience.
Helping pull all of this together today is His Royal Highness the Duke of Sussex. He's made it clear that we are all just to call him Harry.
So plain old Harry then was what he was called, and we had a chat with Aisha, didn't we? And
we did.
Because they kind of discussed all this before they went on stage.
Yeah, so they met backstage. She put up a photo of the pair of them on Twitter of the meeting, and she described him as being very warm, very informal, great with the delegates, spent a lot of time meeting people, but I think the key thing that everyone picked up on was the fact that he didn't want any airs and graces around him. He just wanted to be plain old Harry.
Yeah, we had a good chat with Aisha about that and how they came to that conclusion, and also what she thought of it and what it means going forward.
He and his team were like, no, very relaxed, just call him Harry, just Harry. And
it's very much a nod to what's about to happen, the big change that's coming.
Yeah, I think that was it was a nod to that, but wearing it lightly, not making a big deal about it, but just to say, look, I want to kind of sort of move away from that pomp and circumstance.
Aisha also said to me that her parents were like beyond happy that she'd met Prince Harry. I think for her family, Aisha's Scottish, but she's also got a Muslim background, but I think her family, she's described them as, staunch royalists. They were over the moon that she did this event.
She seemed really
Harry.
genuinely touched to have been asked, didn't she?
Now, listen, we've got the next week, so next time we record this podcast, we will have been in Ireland with William and Kate, which is the first time a member of the royal family has paid an official overseas tour since Brexit. And therefore, the Ireland tour next week, along with Prince Charles and Camilla's tour, which we've got some more details on coming up. So let's do a little tour roundup, shall we?
A tour
news.
Let's go away from the Sussexes.
Let's pause some Sussexes, and we'll talk about the John Bon Jovi session, as it was, at the Abbey Road studios shortly. But wait for the end for that. Let's have a little tour roundup. So Ireland next week. We know that they're going to go to Dublin, to County Meath, to County Kildare, and to Galway, which is on the west coast of Ireland. 3 days, and therefore quite important to try and, this is Britain's nearest neighbour. In fact, the only country in the European Union with which the United Kingdom has a land border. And that's been much talked about during the Brexit negotiations, as people will know. But it's quite an important visit for William and Kate.
It is, yeah, and actually their first visit to the Republic of Ireland. And I think we'll see a lot across the visit of them highlighting the links between the UK and Ireland and talking about our lasting friendship and why that relationship is so important. I think that will be a big theme for next week.
And they also talked about the theme of remembrance and reconciliation, because obviously everything that's happened since partition in the early 1920s and the troubles of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, remembrance and the word reconciliation is clearly going to be very important for them next week. So we will discuss that. We will bring you the details of that tour to County Meath, County Kildare, Galway and Dublin after we return from Ireland next week.
Yeah, as is the case with lots of sort of visits to Ireland, there's a lot of security around the details, so we can't actually go into
In fact,
much more detail.
I'm not going to show them
We'll have to
because
see.
they've got those red marks to say, you can't talk about this. So I'll keep those red marks.
Very good.
What about, there's some red marks on this piece of paper as well, but we can share some details of what Charles and Camilla are going to be doing at the end of March.
We can, yep. So it was announced this week that Charles and Camilla are going on tour between the 17th and 25th of March. The Prince of Wales is going to start off on his own with a visit to Bosnia. And that'll be to mark the 25th anniversary of the genocide.
Yeah, the Srebrenica genocide, which was an absolutely horrendous and significant part of what is our very recent history. We're talking, 25 years ago. So we're talking 1995. So visits to Sarajevo and to Srebrenica to talk about, to look forward as much as look back. But just in terms of the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, that Balkans war, which was a real blot on the world's, diary, if you like, in the mid-1990s.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very poignant visit, and it's something that the Prince has, he's focused on in the past. He's met families of the missing.
There are still families. There are still families who do not know what's happened to their loved ones.
Yeah.
They still haven't found them, which is, going to be very, very difficult.
And he's had some of those families to Clarence House in the past, but he will meet people when he's out there as well.
So from Bosnia and Herzegovina, he flies to
Cyprus, where he's joined by the Duchess of Cornwall.
Now, again, Duchess of Cornwall joins in there. Even Cyprus is very interesting. It's 60 years since it ceased being a British colony. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's the whole issue of the division of that island. He's also going to go to the buffer zone, where there are still, and I've never been there, but there are still some sort of houses and things inside that sort of UN-monitored buffer zone between those two different parts of Cyprus. So another fascinating visit in that sense.
Yeah, and actually the first, fun fact for you, first royal visit since the Queen visited in 93. So it's been a very long time. Kate and William did go to Cyprus.
Yes, they went to the RAF base, Akrotiri. But I think if you go to the British military base in Akrotiri, you're not technically in Cyprus because you're on British soil, or I don't know how it works.
So this is the first official visit
since
1993. So
that's also going to be, extremely interesting. And then, and visits to the Troodos Mountains, to Nicosia. So lots and lots going on in Cyprus. And then, ordinarily, you might think, well, this couple, they're in their early 70s, they want to fly home then.
Yeah, this is. They then go on.
That's country two.
To Jordan together.
Right.
And as Clarence House pointed out, they are doing, I think, a total of 51 engagements across the tour, which,
Prince Charles is, 72 this year? The Duchess of Cornwall, correct me if I'm wrong, 73 this year.
Yeah.
She's a year ahead of him, isn't she? That's quite a phenomenal and quite punishing schedule for them.
An incredible work rate, but as was also pointed out, this is a couple that their work rate, we know when they're abroad, their schedules are always packed full, but equally in the UK, they both pack in a lot of engagements.
Yep. And they'll be meeting the King and Queen of Jordan, obviously the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, so they'll be meeting the King and Queen there as well, visits to the National Park and other places, again, we can't tell you about. But, Jordan itself is quite interesting because there's like a staggering percentage of its population, something like 1 in 14, which is refugees because of the influx of people from Syria, from Iraq, from Palestine previously as well. It's a phenomenal high number of refugees.
Yeah, and this visit that they're making will focus on the support that Jordan is giving to refugees. I think there's something like 600 150,000 Syrian refugees in Jordan.
Yeah, so more than half a million
staggering.
Syrian refugees have fled across the border from Syria because of everything that's been going on in there. So, I mean, so I think this is the potential to be a very, very interesting tour. It's almost like there's nothing that really binds the three countries together or the tour together. They're sort of three sort of separately interesting bits, aren't they? Which I think is quite fascinating. Do you want to go back to William and Kate quickly and what they've been doing this week? Because we mentioned Kate's green jumpsuit, tracksuit, trouser suit, whatever you call it. But she was having a little race.
She was. Well, we know Kate
track.
has always.
They're good pictures.
They are very good pictures.
If you want to go check them out on our Instagram page, which we should say is at ITV News Royals on Instagram.
Yeah, and for those watching, we might be able to show you some pictures now. But Kate is. We know that she was always sporty. She likes getting involved. She's, we've seen her trying out all sorts of sports in her role as Duchess of Cambridge. But yeah, she kind of got stuck in this week.
She was supporting
sprinting off the blocks. And
what was it called? Team Action Sport, which was not just supporting the children, the
Sports Aid.
Sports Aid.
Sports Aid.
Sport. What was it called?
If they want a rebranding, they should definitely not come to you.
Tell me what it was called.
Sports Aid.
Right.
Yes.
But I think to tell you why I was confused because I think one of their social media things has the word team in it. It might be Team Sports Aid. Anyway, we'll check that out. Maybe we'll put it up.
No, it's definitely Sports Aid.
If you're watching this on YouTube. So this is the event that she went to, but it was supporting the parents, actually kind of saying you don't get the next generation of children athletes if you don't have the parents supporting them. And that was the whole idea.
Yeah, so the charity Sports Aid does
Sports Aid.
support the next generation of sort of our sporting stars. So we're talking
I'm gonna
Olympic athletes, Paralympic, etc. But this event that Kate was at was kind of celebrating the parents and guardians of these people that have gone on to achieve great things.
I'm just going to look up the Instagram page and why I got it completely confused because Team Sports Aid, that's right. So the charity is called Sports Aid. On Instagram it's called Team Sports Aid, and that was the event that Kate was at and why I couldn't remember the name of it. Anyway. We've corrected it, at least. Or you've corrected me, at least. Okay, so I suppose we should... there was the Queen this week. We haven't mentioned the Queen, and we haven't mentioned MI5. So a secret visit by the Queen to the headquarters of the agency that does secret things.
That's right. So this was a secret visit.
Well, she made a speech, and I think what was quite... I'll tell you what, why don't we hear a bit of the Queen, because there was a very interesting bit of the Queen where she said, because of the nature of the work that you do as Britain's spies, you never get any thanks. So I, as the Queen of this country, I'm going to do that thanks for you.
I would like to take my visit here today as an opportunity to thank you all for the tireless work you do to keep our country safe. I'm always struck by the remarkable resolve with which you carry out your vital role. There will no doubt continue to be significant threats and challenges ahead. But on each of my visits to MI5, I have been impressed by the way that you have adapted to the changing threats to our nation. Whether responding to the threats from the Nazis, or the Cold War, domestic terrorism, or the cybersphere, you have always demonstrated the utmost commitment to your motto, Regnum Defendi. Because of the nature of your work, it is without public recognition. So it is on behalf of the country that I say to you all, thank you.
So that was a pretty fascinating visit for the Queen, and we weren't told about it in advance, which is why we say it was a secret visit that she went to. We just had an announcement after she had left, but going in there at all is highly sensitive. John Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer.
Yep.
Although Harry didn't sing Living on a Prayer, he's recorded something else with John Bon Jovi.
He has, yes. So to tee up the visit that he's making to see John Bon Jovi record his single Unbroken with the Invictus Games Choir, they put a text message on the Sussex Royal Instagram account. It was an imagined text message.
Between
this wasn't
Harry
a real text message.
and Bon Jovi, wasn't it? Which was quite interesting. And actually, we were annoying some of the producers of this podcast earlier because as we were sitting here waiting to go, I was on Spotify playing "Living on a Prayer" and
trying to sing.
I was singing it, but I wasn't actually singing it. I was murdering it.
We won't subject anyone to
the
that.
famous Abbey Road studios in London, which is made famous by the Beatles, of course, but it was where Prince Harry was with that singer of Living on a Prayer. Just over there is Abbey Road Studios, where the Beatles made many of their albums, and where this morning Bon Jovi turned up and Prince Harry joined him. Now, we're keeping this very short because it's wet.
It is a very typical British winter day. It is wet. It's cold.
I've been here literally for about 2 hours.
And we're very bedraggled.
Anyway, so
me particularly.
Rather than hear from us, so why was Harry here? Let's just explain why he was here.
So Harry was here for a recording session with Bon Jovi and the Invictus Games Choir. They're recording a single for the Invictus Games Foundation called Unbroken.
And Unbroken is something that Bon Jovi himself wrote for the American military, where, as he points out, 22 members every day are committing suicide because of PTSD and other things. But it's being released for Invictus Games, which is coming up
in May. Yeah, he actually wrote to Prince Harry suggesting this. He had to search for Prince Harry's address to send it to him, and he pitched the idea, and Harry came back and said that they would like to get involved.
So rather than hear from us talking about it, why don't we hear from the man around here they call JBJ? Hey, so how was that?
Pretty awesome.
Abbey Road Studios, Bon Jovi, Prince Harry.
In the Beatles studio, no less. On the mic where Paul and John sang.
If you're in the Invictus Choir in there, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Until we do something bigger and better, but for now, I think it was awesome.
What I saw him starting to sing. I didn't hear the rest of it. Tell me about what sort of voice has he got?
You're just going to have to wait and see. But he was awesome. He really was. When I wrote this song, it was for the American troops and our soldiers with PTSD, and the idea that they needed service dogs. Very small documentary, but on a parallel course, and at the same time, I put it in the mail and I sent it to Harry because I was aware of the games. I was aware of their choir. And I'd sent them the lyric sheet, and I said, we should do this for the troops, because I'd like to give something back to the UK who've given me so much for nearly 40 years. And he agreed, and so we found the time, and in light of everything that he's been through, he stuck to that, and here we are and did it.
And you know how much the Invictus Games mean to Prince Harry. I mean, I went to the one in Toronto. It's an amazing tournament, isn't it?
Yeah, and to bring these soldiers, these men and women, that sense of camaraderie and pride and who they are now, based on who they were then, and this will be a continuum for them.
And tell me about the name that you've given Prince Harry.
The artist formerly known as Prince. That was actually funny for a change.
Did you like that?
Yes, he did very much. As I was in there fumbling as to what to address him by, he was the one that repeated my line. Yeah.
What do you make of his departure? I mean, it's pretty sad.
How can I comment? I mean, I don't know what it's like to walk in his shoes, but I, as an American, really admire the family and what his grandmother, grandfather, father, brother, he have done. I really feel the nation should still embrace them. They're wonderful.
And to leave that all behind, everyone here is going to miss Harry and Meghan.
I bet you they will.
So a significant event, I think, and that was event number 2 in the sort of farewell tour. So I suppose that there's a neat point to say, OK, Harry's been to Edinburgh, he's now done the Bon Jovi event, and then next week he gets joined by Meghan for the sort of goodbye tour.
He does. So
should we call it that? Let's just call it the farewell tour.
The farewell tour. So next week is quite interesting because on Thursday we see Harry joined by Meghan at the Endeavour Fund Awards, and this is the first time we'll have seen Meghan at a public engagement since they announced their intention to step back as senior members of the family.
The last time Meghan was in the UK was Canada House.
The last time she was seen at a public engagement, and then she left pretty quickly after that.
To go see Archie, of course, and you can blame her, she was missing her son.
We've seen, pictures that they've put out themselves and photographs that have been taken without their permission, but this is the first public engagement she'll have been to.
So that's important. And so after William and Kate have had their tour next week, it's still going on.
So yeah,
but then I suppose we shouldn't. Should we single out the Sussexes for doing something when William and Kate are on tour? But Prince Charles is doing some stuff while William and Kate are on tour, and nobody's moaning at him. So let's be fair.
And there is also sort of an argument that Kate and William's engagements for the day will have wrapped up by the
Yes.
time Harry and Meghan have
Just if
their...
you're us and you're on the tour, you've got to fly back or go back and by some more sustainable means, however you want to travel from.
You'll be swimming.
From Dublin to
I'll see you in London.
Swim across the Irish Sea, get back probably on Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, and having missed not only the Endeavour Awards.
Okay, so let's run through. So Ireland is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then the event you've just spoken about.
The Endeavour Awards start on the Thursday
night. Friday,
Harry is at the Silverstone Experience with Lewis Hamilton.
with Lewis Hamilton. Saturday,
Harry and Meghan are together, an engagement again. They're at the Mountbatten Festival of Music, which is interesting because last year Harry attended that in his role as Captain General of the Royal Marines. And of course that is one of the...
He's no longer Captain General of the Royal Marines, but
That's
it's
one
not
of the
being,
things
what's the technical word? It's not
lost.
being filled for this year's transition period. Sunday?
Meghan has her only solo engagement of the final round of engagements, and she's got an International Women's Day event, of which more details will be released.
And then drumroll, Monday, Commonwealth Day, with the rest of the royal family. I'll be interested to see what the body language is like between the rest of the royal family and Harry and Meghan. But
this is something the service at the Abbey they go to every year, but they will all be there in the same
William
room.
and Kate missed it, didn't they, a couple of years ago when they were skiing, and they were criticised then for not attending that event.
William was away and criticised.
Yes, he was abroad. So we think everyone will be there, and we'll clearly be watching the body language. So a ton of stuff to discuss next Friday for the podcast. We will bring you the wrap-up of Ireland, the stuff that Harry and Meghan have done up until that point. So another royal week of mayhem and chaos and busyness.
Yeah, it's always busy.
See you next week.